Greetings, denizens of the Empire. It's Jabara here. Dating is hard, and finding someone that you want to marry and who wants to marry you too is even harder, for some people more than others. Take me for example, a nerd who spends most of his time on his computer has very few opportunities to meet potential partners, and additionally, there's pretty low demand for an African historian or gamer as far as potential boyfriends or husbands are concerned. However, aside from my extraordinary difficulties, I think that most men can agree that the most difficult part of finding a relationship is the constant rejection and having the ability to know what to say or how to say it in order to get a woman's attention without scaring her away or being too uncool for her standards, or in general lacking the ability or interest in playing the game required to ignite the initial spark to get her attention. Most women, on the other hand, can probably agree that the hardest part is simply finding the one out of the many who approach them properly. You know, in a way that isn't too overbearing, disrespectful, or, well, weird. And if he makes it that far, hoping that he is as serious about the relationship as she is. More specifically, a man who wants more than just one thing, and a man that remains faithful. Throughout history, many cultures just bypass these difficulties altogether with various systems such as arranged marriages and even barter of wives. However, what if I told you that a small population of West Africans had these problems all figured out a long time ago? And if that surprises you, then you might be even more surprised by just how they did it. So before we discuss exactly how the process works, let's start off by discussing the homeland and the history of the people who partake in this unorthodox method of marriage proposal. Off the southwestern coast of the country of Guinea-Bissau, and having a population of roughly 30,000 inhabitants, the Basagos Islands consists of an archipelago of around 90 islands, occupying 10,000 square kilometers, with 21 of the islands being permanently inhabited, 21 others only seasonally occupied, and many of them being deemed as either sacred or labeled as national parks by the government of Guinea-Bissau. The lucrative position of this archipelago and the climatic conditions of the region has had a profound impact on the culture and social organization of its inhabitants throughout history, the locations of trade routes being a prominent factor as the importation and exportation of goods effectively reached throughout the vast network of major river systems of West Africa, all the way down to the forested regions down the Niger River Delta. As with most other parts of the world, trade routes influenced the foundation of permanent human settlements, and it is believed that the Basagos were first settled in around 1100 CE, capitalizing on the trade from nearby kingdoms like Takrur and Ghana. Though oral history does not seem to have preserved exactly where these migrants originally came from, it is theorized that they may have originated in the northeast, in Guinea, and most likely came in multiple waves during several centuries of the medieval trade. Gold and slaves were the most important long-distance trade commodities, while cola nuts and several food items were traded locally. Historically, the Basagos Islanders resisted dominance from neighboring and foreign powers through a combination of battle, trade, alliances, and intermarriage, depending on the point in history in question. By the time Portuguese explorers first began arriving in the region in the 15th century, there was already a highly organized society with a powerful navy and an advanced trade network. However, these Portuguese explorers found something else that was even more surprising to them. Something that was virtually non-existent in not just the majority of Africa's history, but the entire world's history. Something else that's rare to see is a man as lonely as I am. Lonely, but also very busy trying to enthusiastically produce more content. Yeah, not the best combo. When feeling this way, it's hard to remain calm and focus on work sometimes, and that's why I use YoursApp. My partnership with YoursApp not only made this video possible, but it also helped me do a better job at it. YoursApp contains a plethora of mind and body exercises to help maintain mental health, including therapy by way of short videos that are created by real psychologists. Other features include meditative exercises, calming music to help with sleep, yoga routines, breathing routines, and much more. I'm personally a big fan of the breathing exercises, each of which has a distinct pattern, some promoting focus while others promote rest, relaxation, or a balance of both. Oh, and speaking of mood, yours app also includes a mood check-in feature which only takes about 30 seconds to complete and provides a small tooltip upon completion to help guide you towards feeling better. I was honestly highly surprised that they hit the nail on the head with my main stressor and provided me with real advice that can help improve my situation. If you'd like to try this life-changing app, you can get a massive 60% discount by clicking my referral link or applying my coupon code NOTHING at checkout. Both of these can be found down below. Gender roles of the Pasagos Islands have traditionally lacked any gender-specific hierarchical advantages. Instead, they have always been complementary. In other words, neither men nor women had particularly higher or lower places in society based solely on gender. Spiritual, political, and economic tasks were divided based on age and gender. From the lowest of workforces all the way up to royal lines, women, for example, could perform high duties that were typically fulfilled by men in much of Africa, including high ritual duties, head of compound, head of village, and women could even be the head of initiation into manhood if her husband were to die prior to another man within the compound being initiated into the role. Even after the man is initiated, he must still pay the woman for all of her hard work before he can properly take over her role. Now, on to the main topic. Once a woman comes of age, she is able to choose her own husband, and by some accounts, he can't really say no. She does this by symbolically cooking him a fish dinner, and if he eats it, it is his way of saying yes to her proposal. Another notably unique position that women held in Pasagos society was the ability to replace a husband if he did not produce any children after several years of marriage. Prior to the modern era, in most of the world, a woman was usually to blame if no children were born, but today, it is known that both men and women can be sterile. In Pasagos society, it was the man who was to blame for either being infertile or simply lacking the initiative to seek out help in these situations from a diviner or a healer or, in modern cases, a hospital. Divorces were also the privilege of women, and in such cases, the elders of the village could bring her back and help her choose a new husband in her home village. However, with the advent of the transatlantic slave trade and incursions from the Portuguese, female slaves were captured more frequently than male slaves, and as a result, the gender-based social status gradually became asymmetrical, and thus men eventually began to take hold of the majority of the power in the society of the islands. Elders of the island lamented on the current situation that global influence has brought upon their people, and which they feel is plaguing their society, traditions, and culture. 90-year-old Caesar Okrane said the following regarding the topic. Now the world is upside down. Men are running after women instead of waiting for them to come to them. They also noted that men who leave the islands for the mainland in search of jobs and education opportunities tend to return with an emboldened mentality towards women, openly approaching them for marriage proposals. While there are few written historical records to corroborate this, it is said that divorce rates tended to be much lower and relationships more stable when women proposed in the traditional manner. Regardless, there is a general consensus among the Pasagos Islanders that divorce rates are significantly higher today than they were back during the days before men were proposing to women. It is believed that waiting patiently for the proposal on a plate instilled a sort of patience and gratitude in men, even if it took many years longer than the time that they were initially hoping to receive their fish dinner. Even after marriage, the young couple would spend up to 4 months building their new home, and upon its completion, only then their marriage would finally be considered official, and they could begin building a family and a life together. All in all, a very long process that required exceptional time and patience. While there have been other parts of the world with similar matrilineal systems such as China's Yunnan province and the British Isles, the sheer influence and authority of women on the Pasagos Islands is simply unrivaled. Disclaimer, the following content is just my personal opinion on the situation. I think Pasagos Islanders had it right a very long time ago. In today's society, no matter how you want to look at it, women have all the power when it comes to dating and marriage. but they don't have to make the first move and they don't have to get down on their knees and propose. In other words, the hardest part. And by hardest part, I mean where you have to shove aside any nervousness, anxiety, or shyness, all the while seeming as cool, collected, and confident as possible, without being too cocky but also being creative as possible, and even still having an incredibly high chance of just being rejected regardless of what you do. Kinda like being in a job interview, but you also have a huge crush on the person who's conducting the interview and knowing that there's a good chance that you may not even get the job anyway, regardless of how good your resume looks, which they didn't even bother looking at in the first place. Also, with that being said, the men who are the most successful at meeting women are the ones who do it for questionable reasons, and they get pretty good at it too. Players. This inevitably leads to women choosing men with poor qualities, since said men with poor qualities are the ones who have mastered their abilities, and thus they overrepresent the men as a whole, since they tend to have more women and thus cause women to have a different perspective on men as a whole. Additionally, many women tend to have highly unrealistic or just overall picky standards, despite not being the ones who have to make the first move or propose. On top of this, despite the relatively equal society that we live in during the modern era, men are still looked upon as men, the providers, the protectors, and are expected to take care of their wife and family. Men will tend to be shunned as failures if they don't have a good job, for example, while women won't. For the most part, women just have to wait around until a man shows up and tries to wine and dine her, and she just has to say yes or no. In a society where women can have such high standards as they do, and be the ones required by law to make the first move, I think it only makes sense that relationships would have been more stable and divorces less common. In a society where men are looked upon as the providers and the protectors and the ones to take care of the family, it seems very logical for me that women should be the ones to choose their potential protector and provider and to approach him and win him over and win his heart, as opposed to modern Western society where women have the most control over the dating and the marriage scene, despite not having to be the ones to make the moves or have the best job or any of the other standards that men are expected to live up to. This reality is also what I believe is one of the triggers for the disproportionately bad amount of experiences that most women in the West have with men. The more assertive men who have perfected the art of seducing tend to overshadow the better men who may not be as sharp in their seductive skills. If our society was built around women making the first move instead of waiting for men to approach them, I think that better matches would be made, as men would be judged more on their qualities rather than the smoothness of their initial approach, as players and F-boys tend to be the best ones at initial approaches, and if women were the ones to choose their partner and make the first move, they'd more than likely search for different qualities in their potential partners like honesty, thoughtfulness, intelligence, and maturity, rather than superficial things that our society tends to perpetuate. And women would see men that they like and just go after them rather than waiting around and hoping against all hope that he comes up to her and asks for her phone number in a clever, smooth, or punny way. Anyway, again, that last bit was just my personal opinions on the matter, and I apologize if it was somewhat ranty at the same time. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more interesting topics like these. And before you go, don't forget to claim your 60% discount on yours app to boost your mental health and to boost the empire from nothing. For sources, check out my website, linked below. If you'd like to support future projects, you can do so there as well, or by clicking the join button below, or by becoming a patron. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching as usual, and always remember, we don't come from nothing.